In this video, we'll look at the French higher writing paper, which is 1 hour 20 minutes. To begin with, I'll introduce the 3 questions, and then afterwards we'll go into detail regarding each question, how to plan and get the most marks possible. So with question 1, this is 80 to 90 words and it's worth 20 marks out of the 60. Now with this, you will have a choice of 2 questions, so it's imperative that you look at both. You find out which one you're most confident with, which topic you're most confident with, which bullet points you all understand, and then choose only one of them to answer. With question 2, this is your main bulk of mark and words regarding the higher writing paper, as it is worth up to 28 marks, and you're writing 130 to 150 words. Again, like question 1, you'll have 4 bullet points, and again, you'll have your choice of 2 questions, so you need to do the same thing where you choose which one you are most confident with, and then only answer that one. To finish, you'll have a 1 paragraph which you need to translate into French, and that is worth 12 marks out of 60. What you need to think about at the beginning of the paper is the fact that you have an hour and 20 and you've got 3 questions, so about splitting your time up and thinking about you'll be spending more time on question 2 because it is worth almost half of your whole paper. You can of course start on any question, so make sure that you choose carefully and that you answer all questions and give as much time as possible to all 3, rather than leaving the paragraph, for example, to the end and having to rush through that. The 80 to 90 word and the 130 to 150 word task in the higher paper have some similarities. For example, they both have 4 bullet points, and how you plan for them is very, very similar. So regarding the 4 bullet points, they are always the same category, so it's always 2 present tense, 1 past and 1 future, and you can rely on that. The first thing you need to do when you get to both these tasks is to work out what the bullet points mean and then what tense they require. So if we look at the 80 to 90 word task, I can see bullet point 1 is how is your area or region, so I know that's present tense. I see that it says there's positive and negative aspects, so again that's present tense, so I know I'm left with the past and future. I'm looking at number 3, une activité récente. I know that récent means recent, so that must be the past. And in bullet point 4, le weekend prochain, that means next weekend, so therefore I know that means the future. It's imperative that you write down in English what those bullet points mean and also what tense they require. You would then, for both the 80 to 90 and the 130 to 150 word task, after you've worked out the meaning of them and wrote the text next to them, you would then write jottings and plan jottings for each paragraph. The only difference being is that for the 130 to 150 word task, you may plan more vocabulary just due to the number of words required and therefore detail required. It's excellent technique to split your writing up into 4 paragraphs, so 1 paragraph per bullet point. This shows the examiner a clear structure and arrangement of your ideas and French writing. The next part of the video will show you how to use jottings in more detail and the benefits of it in order for you to be able to get the best marks possible in these 2 questions. What we're now going to look at in this part of the video is how to plan for the 80 to 90 word task, which is in the foundation and higher paper, and then we're also going to look at the 130 to 150 word task. The beauty of this is that both tasks, you can kind of see them, have the same categories in terms of they always include 2 versions of the present tense and 1 past tense and 1 future tense in terms of the bullet points. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the 80 to 90 word task, and we're going to use that as an example, but you would do exactly the same thing with the 130 to 150 word task, but you might plan a little bit extra. So what you would do is, the first thing that you would do is you would plan your bullet points. You need to work out what the bullet points mean. So if we look at these over here, okay, so we've got comment est ta région, I've got les aspects positifs et négatifs de ta ville ou ton village, I've got une activité récente dans ta région, and tes projets pour le week-end prochain. So I know, as I've already said, that I'm going to have 2 present tense, I'm going to have 1 past tense and 1 future tense. So what you do is, the first thing you need to do, and it's imperative that you do this properly, is to work out what the bullet points mean. So as I said before, okay, I wrote down that I've got the past tense, the future tense, and 2 versions of the present tense. So if we look at the first bullet point, it says comment est ta région. I know that means how is your area. So I know that is present tense, but it's not how is, it's not how was. That's bullet point 1 worked out. Bullet point 2 is les aspects positifs et négatifs de ta ville ou ton village. So I'll read it, positive and negative aspects of your town or village. Okay, so I wrote that down there. Again, I know it's positive and negative aspects, nothing to do with a different tense, so that's 2 versions of the present tense done. I'll then look at bullet point 3, une activité récente dans ta région. Okay, so the key word being récente, which means recent. So I know that if it says something recent, that means the past tense. So bullet point 3 is recent activity in my town or area. And I'm going to write in brackets next to it past tense, just to enforce that fact that I need to remember when I plan that I'm writing it in the past tense for the tenses and whatnot. And then finally, my fourth bullet point, to raise it up slightly, c'est projet pour le week-end prochain. We know that le week-end prochain means next weekend. Therefore, I'm writing in the future tense, and projet means future. So I'll make sure that I write down all 4 bullet points, what they mean, and the tenses. So I'm just going to add next to these two that it's present and present over here as well, because then I know that when I'm planning, I know that I'm writing the present tense for the first 2 bullet points, and then past tense bullet point 3, and future tense bullet 4. After working out the bullet points and what they mean, then I would look at applying jottings. So I'm going to get rid of the task now, okay, because I've already worked out what they mean, so I know that I need to plan now. So what you would do is you would use jottings as your kind of acronym for each paragraph, so or each bullet point. And essentially you would write down, in the 80 to 90 word task, you would write down at least 1 word or phrase for each aspects of these. Now, jotty, J-O-T-T-I, is the things that you must include, okay? You must include at least 1 example of these for each of the bullet points. The negative structures and the star structures, those are kind of your fancy pieces, your seasoning, okay? That's really going to allow you to push forward to get the highest marks possible on your assessment or exam. But like I said, the jotty, J-O-T-T-I, is what you need to plan in particular. So if we look at it, we're going to choose, I'm not going to show you how to do each bullet point, okay? We're going to focus specifically on bullet point 3, which is recent activity in my town. I'm going to talk about how we use jottings to plan for that in order to get the best planning session possible, which will make our writing each paragraph the best possible. So what we do is, so when we're thinking about our using jottings, we need to think about the bullet point and make sure that what we're writing is relevant. So it says recent activity in my town and past tense. So I'm going to start with tenses, even though it's not the first letter in jottings. I think it's the most important thing. So I'm thinking of recent activity in my town, and then I refer to my knowledge that I've already got from the jotting sheet, and I'm going to choose 2 verbs, okay? I'm choosing 2 verbs because I think I'm going to be able to add detail to them. So I'm thinking recent activity in my town. I'm thinking je suis allé, which means I went, and j'ai fait, which means I did. Now those 2 verbs are versatile and they relate nicely to that activity, that bullet point of recent activity in my town. The second aspect of jottings that I'm going to think about are time phrases. Now I'm only going to do 1 in this example, okay, because I think yesterday is enough. Again, it says recent activity, so I think yesterday relates nicely to that. The third thing I'm going to choose is an opinion. So I've chosen j'aime vraiment because I'm going to keep it positive. So j'aime vraiment means I like really, and I think that's a nice phrase, okay, and it allows me to use 2 words as well. The third thing I want to think about are my justifications. So again, keeping it relevant. I'm writing in the past tense, so I need to use it was, so c'était. And then I've chosen captivating, which is captivant in French. And then I've also chosen passionate, which means exciting. Again, related to the fact that I'm keeping it positive. I can't say, for example, j'aime vraiment ma ville parce que c'était, or c'est, ennuyeux, for example, because that doesn't make sense. I can't say that I really like something because it's boring. My next aspect of jottings is my intensifiers, which relate to my my adjectives or my justifications. So those go before them. I've chosen 2, which are assez, which is quite, and tellement, which is so. And I'd mix and match those with either or both of the justifications. So I say, for example, c'était assez captivant. It was quite captivating. And that shows that I'm using the past tense. I've had an intensifier and a strong justification. So as I said before, the negative structures and the star structure are something that you don't need to necessarily include, okay? But if you can, then that's a really good way to show the examiner, to show your teacher how impressive your French is, your range of language, your content, okay? So regarding a negative structure, I've chosen 1 and I've chosen ne jamais. So my phrase that I've chosen with the past tense verb is je n'ai jamais visité, which means I have never visited. Now that's a good phrase with my topic of recent activity in my town. I could say I've never visited, and then whatever it is, I could add the detail in later. And then finally, my star structure that I've chosen is j'aurais voulu y aller, which means I would have liked to have gone. And again, I've chosen it because it's a nice star structure, which is relevant, it's versatile, and it works nicely with our third bullet point. Once you've got all of those written down, and you can either write them down in the list like I've done, or you could make them in the quadrant. You could do 1 quadrant for each bullet point. You just then write your paragraph, and you use them to make it match it up. So for example, I'd start with the tense, so je suis allé. I'd add a bit of detail about where I went. I could say what I did. I could say when I did it. I might start with hier instead of je suis allé. I might say hier je suis allé. Then I might add my opinion and justifications, and not forgetting my intensifiers. And then I might finish with my negative structures and star structures, as a kind of good way to show the examiner how good I am. Now, you would do this in both the 80 to 90 and the 150 word task as a good way to show your planning and a good way to show how detailed your French is. I would advise with the 130 to 150, if you're sitting the higher paper, to write at least 2 examples of jottings for each bullet point. So 2 justifications, 2 opinions, 2 time markers, etc. And that shows really good planning, and it allows you to get your ideas down clearly. The last task on the higher writing paper is a translation, where you'll be given a paragraph in English and you have to translate it into French. Now, this task is marked on an overall basis, so it's not split into separate sections. And for example, if you miss out or mistake a word, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll lose a mark. Therefore, in terms of technique, the first thing that you need to do is to read the text first. Just read it in English and get a kind of a gist of what it's about, what it's asking you to talk about in terms of topic and the vocabulary required. I then advise you to break it down into very small chunks, so approximately 4 to 5 words in every chunk. Look for commas, pauses in the sentences, just whatever to break it up. And then look at the verbs and focus on the tenses and getting those verbs correct. That's a big thing, a big part of the mark scheme is that. And then after that, you would add the details. So an example of this would be looking at the first sentence. I would break it down into, in France would be my first chunk, and then my second chunk would be lessons begin at 8 a.m. So focus on that second chunk. I'm going to think what lessons are, or lessons begin, because that's kind of my my tense and getting the verb correct. So I know that the tense begin is present tense. So I'd start with les cours commencent à 8 heures. I know the fact that when I'm adding my details, I know it's 8 o'clock, and I'm going to write it in French words just in case. If, and this may happen, is that you get to a part and you don't know any words, then I would advise you to skip them, leave a gap in your French writing, and then come back at the end. You would then use education estimates, think of synonyms, to then fill in the gaps. As I said before, this is marked on an overall basis, therefore you will get marked to partial communication, so it's imperative that you have a go, and you will obviously get more marks for having a go rather than leaving it blank or leaving a gap. Just to finish, some important parts to remember regarding the higher writing paper. Things to in particular think about are the fact that you need to refer to every bullet point when there are 4 bullet points. You do not need to write too much, because from experience, the more words that you write, the more mistakes you will make. And those word counts, for example, the 80 to 90, they are there as recommended for you to get the highest marks possible and access the top part of the mark scheme. You will not be penalised for writing more or less, therefore you don't need to count your words, but you can kind of work out one small paragraph for the 80 to 90 and one large paragraph for the 130 to 150 word task. Regarding the translation, it's imperative that you have a go at everything, even if you don't know it, so have an educated guess or use synonyms. And finally, just to confirm, as we keep saying to you, tenses are very important. So that will be on both writing tasks, the fact that you have to write in the past, future and present, and also in the translation task as well. Good luck.